Hello and a very warm welcome, viewers. You're watching Policy Watch. I'm Kriti Mishra, and today we look at the draft online dispute resolution policy. Anticipating a surge in disputes across India owing to COVID-19 pandemic, NITI Aayog has proposed that the government unveil a COVID-19 related scheme for dispute resolution through online dispute resolution mechanism. These disputes can be across various sectors and include non-payment of wages, termination of employment, surge in tenancy, consumer disputes, and a host of other commercial disputes. The draft says that the government can introduce a dispute resolution framework for all disputes below a certain monetary limit. The draft suggests that the government can have temporary schemes with reduced legal service fee or free legal aid for workers to cater to displaced workers from lower economic strata. Comments are invited on NITI Aayog's draft ODR policy and have to be submitted by 11th of November. And for deeper insights on the topic, I'm joined by Tesh Gaurav Sikri, OST Law, NITI Aayog, and Deepika Kinhal, legal expert. Welcome to Vatsabat Television, both of you. Gaurav, let me come to you first. Now, the pandemic has mandated several adjustments which are adaptive and innovative, including in the arena of dispute resolution. Help us understand the concept of online dispute resolution.
So, as you rightly said, and first of all, thank you for having me on your show. I think the pandemic has led to several responses which we couldn't have earlier foreseen. And one of the primary aspects is justice delivery. So what we feel is that the interplay of technology and using certain technological mechanisms to help dispute resolution could greatly take the burden off the courts, especially during the pandemic period, but even as a longer term policy. And with that in mind, with all the advances that we are seeing on an innovation basis, as well as the complete openness of the judiciary to use technology to its fullest, this is the right time for something like online dispute resolution.
This is the right time for online dispute resolution, but Deepika, help us understand, how does this system work? What is the process of online case management?
Thank you, Kriti. Thank you for having me. And that question that you just asked is, in fact, the very first question most of the stakeholders asked of us when we were conducting multiple consultation exercises with them, which is why a significant portion of the report is dedicated towards answering what is ODR. And often ODR is confused with virtual courts. They are almost used interchangeably. But worldwide, the way ODR is evolving indicates that it is, in fact, very different from virtual courts. So one of the main tenets of ODR is that it is happening outside of the public court system. And given that it is still at a very nascent stage, there is no fixed definition of ODR, which is why the way the report deals with the concept of ODR is to identify certain indicators which would classify a dispute resolution process to be an online dispute resolution process. A key element of that is that there should be some usage of ICT tools towards dispute resolution. And this could range from simple to complex tools. And from simple, we mean any form of audio-visual tools, and complex, we mean any form of, say, smart negotiation tools or automated dispute resolution mechanisms. So the spectrum is very wide. However, there needs to be a significant usage of technology geared towards enabling dispute resolution. And the second component is that it is happening outside of the court system. Now, with ODR, as the report would also indicate, the first phase is EADR, which is electronic alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, such as negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. However, ODR, given that it is still evolving, it can be much more. And as I said, that it could be any form of artificial intelligence or machine learning tool integration into the dispute resolution process.
Right. In fact, I remember that Parliamentary Committee on Law and Justice had recommended the continuation of virtual courts even beyond the pandemic period. And now we understand that there is a difference between virtual courts and also ODR. But Gaurav, you pointed out that cases are clogging our judicial system. There are over 3 crore cases pending across Supreme Court, the High Courts, and also the subordinate courts. ODR will prevent a large number of litigations from clogging or cluttering the courts. But the moot question is, how do we unlock or unmask the potential of ODR?
So I think there's several different areas where we're seeing ODR play a very, very key role. One, of course, is through the e-Lok Adalats. You'll see several states that have actually initiated pilot projects where they are taking e-Lok Adalats on something as simple as a WhatsApp call. So you're solving disputes. And again, online dispute resolution is not just about the resolution of dispute, but also you're trying to contain and avoid disputes from even arising. So it's not just a question of helping unclog the courts, you're also helping matters that otherwise would not perhaps even be justiciable find a logical conclusion or resolution. So the entire ambit or gamut of online dispute resolution is significant. An example is, for example, I would say that eBay is set to resolve up to 60 million disputes every year just through the ODR process.
So you just mentioned about eBay. In fact, Gaurav, ease of doing business has been the priority area of Government of India. And India, in fact, jumped 79 positions from 142nd position in the year 2014 to 63rd position in the year 2019 in ease of doing business rankings of World Bank. So how will ODR prove to be game changer for Indian businesses?
I think the efficiency and affordability, along with some level of certainty of resolution of many of the disputes that do arise, especially in the small and medium value segments, is where ODR is going to really make a big difference. I think and it's not just about the businesses. It's also a significant ease of living tool and ease of access to justice tool. So it helps the common man also attain justice. It also helps businesses such as banks or e-commerce players find a resolvable mechanism that is, as I said, efficient, affordable, and frequently conclusive.
Efficient, affordable, but Deepika, there are challenges of enforcement of the outcomes of ODR that perhaps is being experienced across the world. What is the answer to that?
Actually, let me just step back a little and add to what Desh mentioned regarding ease of doing business rankings. As you rightly said, India jumped several ranks in the overall ranking, but one indicator that it continues to lag behind on is enforcement of contracts. There, India ranks 163rd, and there is no improvement in sight because, as you rightly said, the courts are clogged, which is why there is a need to think of an alternative system which is accessible, affordable, and that people can actually use to resolve disputes at their convenience, as opposed to going to courts and filing a case and getting stuck in the rut of the system. That is the true benefit of ODR, convenience. Now, if a party, if two parties do go through the ODR process and they have an outcome, and if we are now talking about the ADR mechanisms, then it would be an award or an agreement. Actually, ODR, if we are talking about it as a component of ADR, there is already sufficient legal framework to enable enforcement of outcomes. We already have Arbitration and Conciliation Act governing arbitration awards, and e-arbitration awards are equally enforceable under the existing framework. And similarly, if it is an e-mediation award, we already have CPC governing mediation, which gives it the same stature as a court order. And now we also have the Singapore Convention, which talks about international mediation awards, to which India is a signatory, which also makes international e-mediation awards easily enforceable in India. So to that extent, I don't think there is a huge gap in the law and policy framework to enable enforcement of ODR outcomes. However, there is still some lack of trust in public mind as to whether ODR outcomes can actually be easily enforceable, because ultimately they don't want to go through the entire process and then go to court to be able to enforce those outcomes. So to that, what the report suggests is that the judiciary and the government undertake confidence building measures to build trust in ODR processes as well as outcomes. So I think legally speaking, we are good to enable enforceability of outcomes, but what needs to be taken care of is the mindset barrier that continues to exist.
So you're talking about the legal barriers that we have to take care of, but also when we talk about technology percolation, there is need for increased access to digital infrastructure, including increased digital literacy across genders, geographies, and age groups. So do you think we can introduce some kind of awareness campaign for ODR?
Absolutely. In fact, that is one of the key recommendations in the report that NITI has just put out. So there are barriers at three levels. There are structural barriers, behavioral barriers, and then implementation barriers. At the structural level, we are talking about lack of digital literacy, lack of digital infrastructure. Then at the behavioral barriers level, we are talking about mindset challenges where there is no trust in the process. And here is where at one level the government needs to step up its efforts to make digital literacy more widespread and make digital infrastructure more readily available. And this would in turn lead to increase in trust in any form of interaction with technology. And that, I think, will eventually play into the way people perceive ODR as well. However, it would obviously help if there is targeted dissemination exercises regarding ODR itself.
So we're talking about creating a perception on ODR. Tej Gaurav, the draft talks about targeted incentives for stakeholders for switching over to ODR. How will that work?
So again, it's a collaborative exercise. I think we're working very closely with the entire ecosystem of stakeholders to devise how exactly, like Deepika had said, if you have the mindset change and you have an environment which is conducive to ODR, I think it's going to be a dynamic process where we're going to have to see what benefits the people who need it the most, right? So I think that we're going to continue to evolve what these incentives are, and as the situation sorts itself out, I think we'll have some more clear directives. And again, this is an ongoing process. I think this is just the start. The report will just be the start. This is going to be something, and it's extremely encouraging to note that all the representatives or the representative departments and ministries in the committee, some of the initiatives that they're doing are absolutely extremely proactive, progressive, and it's almost as if they are ready to do a plug and play for ODR and bring systemic change to each of the areas where they impact the most.
So Gaurav is talking about that there is enthusiasm among the government departments, but we'll slip into a short break, and when we come back, we'll look at the government litigation and what could be the future in adopting ODR platform. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Policy Watch on online dispute resolution. So Gaurav, as we were talking that government and public sector undertakings are amongst the biggest litigants in India. Government departments are a party to around 46% of court cases. What's the way ahead for switching over to ODR platform?
So as I mentioned, there are several different initiatives across. So just to give a little bit of background, the representative ministries who are members of this committee include the MSME, Department of Corporate Affairs, Department of Consumer Affairs. You have DPIIT, and you have the Department of Legal Affairs and Department of Justice. And while Deepika might be able to discuss this in greater detail in terms of what are the most recent developments, several things like the Samadhan or matters before the Consumer Affairs Department, several aspects are already moving towards an ODR regime. So this report just seems to facilitate what has already been in progress with each of these ministries. But Deepika, I think, would be able to give us more detailed examples.
Well, Deepika, your take on that?
There are multiple ways in which government's adoption of ODR will be beneficial, Kriti. Starting point, as you rightly said, government litigation is a huge contributor to the pendency in courts. So if ODR were to be integrated in a big way in government departments, then to that extent, we will have prevented lakhs of disputes from entering into the court system, leaving the courts to decide on matters that are more important for an ordinary litigant. And the other side is where the fact that government has adopted ODR will also boost confidence in ODR process itself. So it will also enable the ordinary litigant to consider ODR as a first stop to resolve his or her disputes. So it is a win-win situation overall. And worldwide as well, the trend we have seen is that there is private ODR in the first phase, and that eventually leads to the government itself integrating ODR platforms to resolve interdepartmental and intra-departmental disputes. And this is where the point that Desh was trying to make, which is that ODR is not just about dispute resolution. Of course, even though the terminology says online dispute resolution, it is actually more than that. It is about dispute avoidance. So you are avoiding these disputes from even emerging, because ODR, through the tools that they create, which is smart negotiation tools, etc., you can actually prevent the disputes themselves from arising. And that is the stance that the government needs to take, that it will prevent government litigation from arising. And even if it arises, even if a dispute arises, it will get resolved through ODR rather than in a court of law. So ODR that way has multiple benefits if we are talking about government litigation.
Multiple benefits, but one of the major challenges that we're seeing is that of privacy and confidentiality. That is a concern worldwide. So how do we set up a robust system?
Those are the first few concerns that any potential user of ODR identifies. Will my data be confidential? And how will ODR platforms guarantee privacy? And this becomes more important when we are talking about first phase of ODR, which we have identified to be EADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution Mechanisms. The crux of it is confidentiality. So through technology as it is, there is a lot of concerns even otherwise regarding data protection and management. And that becomes all the more important when you're talking about a dispute resolution framework, because at the end of the day, you're talking about very confidential and sensitive matters being discussed while resolving disputes. And the way ODR platforms across the world have addressed this, as in the governance mechanisms that have addressed this, is by laying out principles. So there are data principles, technology principles, design principles that are laid out by the government, which these ODR platforms adhere to. Now, there are two ways of going about it. Either you mandate that these ODR platforms will definitely govern themselves by these principles, or you let them self-regulate. And given the nascent stage that ODR ecosystem is currently at, the report recommends that they go about self-regulation, at least for the next couple of years. But the report does go into the details of these data and technology principles that will govern privacy and data management.
Right, so we'll have technology principles, data principles, and also self-regulation is an important component, as you mentioned. But Desh Gaurav, we are witnessing the evolution of legal tech startups in India. They are enabling out-of-court settlement in various disputes. We are also seeing the use of AI, big data, machine learning, blockchain. How do you see the future of ODR startups in India?
So that's a really good question. In fact, I was going to add to Deepika's point on how the data principles and design principles will actually evolve. What we're seeing is a really robust startup community. And what you're seeing is a lot of what you feel are perceived challenges, such as privacy or confidentiality, they're already being looked after in a responsible manner by all the startups in the space. I think they see it as something they aspire to ensure that there is complete confidence by the potential client or whoever the user is to be able to use their platforms with the safety and security and comfort that all of their data is well protected. But going beyond that, you're right. It's a really strong legal tech community that we're seeing in India. In fact, some of the industry leading initiatives are coming from India, which is also intuitive. I think short of getting into invasive AI tools that get into judicial decision making or get into aspects where the proof of concept is not yet established, you're going to see all sorts of solutions that are going to really enhance efficiency and affordability of justice delivery. So when we talk about access to justice and justice for all, a lot of technology innovation that, I'll repeat, is non-invasive is really going to lead the way. And India could really be the market leader for this.
India could be the market leader for this. Deepika, quick closing comments. How do you think India can be at the forefront of global ODR?
I think we are in the right place at the right time. It took us a while to get here. The global ODR trend started way back in 1990s, but we are seeing developments in quick succession in India, which has brought India at par with some of the leading countries on ODR front. So now that the government and the judiciary have at the same time understood the benefits of ODR, I think it is truly going to be a game changer. And this is a much needed transformation in the dispute resolution ecosystem in India to ensure that justice is truly accessible at the convenience of litigants.
Right, so it can be a game changer. Desh Gaurav, last 30 seconds to you for the closing comments.
No, I think it's great that we have something such as online dispute resolution that is being supported by the entire community of stakeholders for justice delivery. I think we're seeing a progressive and proactive approach by the government, by the judiciary, and by a vibrant startup community. So I think the future is very exciting, and I think with everybody on board to help reduce the pendency or to help ensure that matters are justiciable, we are really in a very good place to tackle many of the issues that have plagued us for several decades now.
Right, so there is a progressive approach by the government and judiciary to unmask or unlock the potential of ODR in India. On that note, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for watching Rajya Sabha Television and stay tuned to us.